Hello, PsychU community, and welcome to today's webinar, Viruses, Vaccines, and Inflammation, Neurological Perspectives, which is a three-part series. This is the third of the three-part series, and today we will focus on vaccines and vaccine development with the novel coronavirus. Thank you for joining us today. Dr. Pattee is a clinical neurologist for Neurology Associates PC and is also Associate Professor and Clinical Instructor for the Department of Neurology and Co-Medical Director for the Muscular Dystrophy Association Clinic within the University of Nebraska Medical Center, UNMC. He also serves as the Clinical Instructor in Neurology for the Lincoln Family Practice Residency Program. Dr. Pattee has extensive experience conducting preclinical and clinical trial research, as well as hundreds of scientific publications, abstracts, and oral presentations. Today's presentation is sponsored by Otsuka Pharmaceutical Development and Commercialization, Inc. and Lundbeck LLC. Committed supporters of the mental health treatment community, speakers are paid consultants to OPDC. So we will go to what everyone is anticipating, an upcoming vaccine. So let's talk a little bit about the mitigation strategies for a virus pandemic. Gary, can you walk us through what we've seen so far and what we're anticipating?
Happy to, Jackie. As the slide shows, there are three categories: pharmaceutical, non-pharmaceutical, and vaccination in terms of our strategies. Under the pharmaceutical approaches, of course, the antiviral treatments are being looked at, and quite a few are being looked at right now. The repurposed medications, probably the best example would be the chloroquinated products that are being looked at out there. Can they interfere with the viral propagation and the severity of the virus? And that's a topic of debate even as we speak at this point. So we're looking for pharmaceutical approaches, but right at this point, we don't have valid, reliable approaches to lean on. The non-pharmaceutical approaches, probably something that we should really focus on. Antibodies, of course, which are certainly within the serum mechanism, are being used. Plasma antibodies are being used from those infected to those who have recovered to those who are currently infected. Convalescent plasma, which has had some mechanism of success. The concept of herd immunity, I think most people have become familiar with this topic. It's basically where 60 to 70% of the population is or has been affected by the virus. You probably have achieved a herd immunity mechanism. Now, that's the approach taken by the government of Sweden. Interestingly, we'll see how that transpires, but it's something that ultimately will occur as more cases are affected. In the immediate case, however, we want to be able to isolate people that have been affected. We want to have travel restrictions, home quarantine, sometimes school and workplace closures, meaning identifying individuals who have the virus or who have been exposed to the virus, quarantining these individuals. These are the non-pharmaceutical approaches that are so critical. And I would even throw in mask wearing as a non-pharmaceutical approach. And I think that, to me, is where our best treatments lie. And of course, the vaccination, which we'll be talking about next, is the hope for the future, hopefully the immediate future.
Wonderful. So can you tell us a little bit more about vaccine development and your thoughts on that?
I think most people don't quite understand this concept, Jackie, and I don't mean it badly. It's just a very complicated mechanism. Keep in mind, most vaccines may take anywhere from 15 to 20 years to develop. We're trying to do it within 12 to 18 months, and it's a worldwide effort, and it's a Herculean task. And as you can see on this slide, as we go to the left, the development of new vaccines, there are general stages of development that need to be pursued. First is the exploratory stage, doing the basic work. That oftentimes includes animal studies that can take a long time to perform. Preclinical stage, that means before we're going to put it in a human, we want to know what its safety is. Phase 3, 1 through 3 would be the next stages that we go through, and those are clinical trials, typically focusing on safety. Efficacy would be in the phase 3 category. Once those are completed, there's a regulatory review and approval process. And that's where the FDA and other agencies review all of the details for safety. The key is we do no harm is the whole focus of vaccine development. And then at that point, there's a manufacturing and a quality control. How do you get enough doses out to the individuals that require it or need it? Jumping to the next category, the approval process for vaccine. The sponsor of a new vaccine product follows a multi-step approval process. We call it IND application, the investigational new drug application, pre-licensure vaccine clinical trials, biologics license application, inspection of manufacturing facility, presentation of findings to the FDA's advisory committees, usability testing of product labeling. These are all just part of what is involved with the vaccine development. It's a very super organized process, and it has to be. We want to protect individuals so that what we are offering is a help, you see. And that, I think, is very, very important to point out. I'm just going to jump right into, because I kind of mentioned the phase 1, 2, 3. I like this slide because it's packed with information, but for those who aren't real involved with clinical research trials, it's something I've been involved with for quite some time. If we just work from left to right on this slide, and then, sorry to interrupt, Jackie, whatever questions or comments you have, FDA sets the rules for the 3 phases of clinical trials to ensure safety, as we kind of have alluded to. Safety of volunteers, and that's the most important feature. Phase 1 are almost all safety studies. It's a small amount, usually under 100 individuals, and is, in this case, the vaccine safe? Does it seem to work? Are there any serious side effects? And how's the size of the dose related to any side effects? Once that's been determined, it passes into a phase 2, where you get typically hundreds of individuals. Once again, you're looking for the most common study treatment side effects. How are the volunteers in the immune systems responding to the vaccine? In phase 3, we may get a little more into the efficacy. We're still looking at safety, but we're looking at how this drug is having an effect on the individuals and what are the most common side effects. So within the first 3 phases, we're still focusing on safety, and the FDA licensed the vaccine only if it's safe and effective, and benefits outweigh the risks, which I think is a key point. The circular graph on the end is an important one, that vaccines are made in batches called lots. Manufacturers must test all lots to ensure safety, purity, and potency. And then the FDA inspects the manufacturing facilities. This is a timely process. It does not happen quickly. And so companies are putting a lot of development into this. You've got this Operation Warp Speed that the government is trying to host, getting 100 million doses available by the 1st of 2021. We'll see. There's a lot of funding out there, certainly, for companies to come up with a vaccine, but it is moving at a warp speed compared to what we're used to. But it's an exciting time in that regard.
And I think that's important to point out, that we are trying to move at warp speed and create a timeline that's never been created before. Now, we're in a time of the most advanced technology that we've ever had, and so hopefully that'll help out a little bit, but it is a very interesting process to watch unfold. Now, I like that you brought up that the vaccines will be made in batches, because essentially that's something that we're not really thinking about, right? So we want to see the vaccine developed, but will we have the resources to then distribute the vaccines to everybody? So now you're talking about vials and needles and et cetera, and then who will be injected first, I think is also one of those hot topics. And then I also think it's important to note, when evaluating these vaccines in phase 3, that in June, the FDA essentially was quoted as saying that the coronavirus vaccine would have to protect at least 50% of the vaccinated people to be considered effective. And so this is what those companies and those vaccines are aiming for in that phase 3 trial outcome. So let's now move on to types of coronavirus vaccines in development. So I'd like to note that there are well over 140 different types of vaccines that are being tried, and they're in a variety of different phases like we were discussing. So first off, let's talk a little bit about virus vaccines. Can you walk us through this a little bit?
You absolutely, Jackie. This particular slide shows 2 types of virus vaccines that have been used. The weakened virus or the inactivated virus. And as the point suggests, many existing vaccines are made via this method, for measles, for polio. Now, this does require extensive safety testing. Obviously, you're giving the virus. A weakened virus, conventionally weakened by being passed through animal human cells until it mutates, making it less able to cause disease, but not totally unable, or the inactivated virus, where you render it non-infectious using chemicals. And the display off to the right, and we'll see this on just about all the remaining slides, just shows how these different mechanisms of vaccines, in this case, the weakened and the inactivated viruses, enter the cell, are basically approached by the antigen presenting cell. The peptide is displayed by the APC, inducing an immune response. At that point, typically the adaptive immune, the T B cell response that we see. It's only if we see a significant effect that this particular vaccine is considered an effective one for mass production. But these two types are being looked at right now.